We're at Brew Donkey. Brew Donkey does three things in Ottawa right now. We do in office or in home tastings like this, where we help guide you through what is becoming a complicated mess of amazing breweries in Ottawa, as well as helping you learn a little bit more about how beer is made and how to taste it. So he's the expert on tasting, so I'm going to let him talk about that. But myself, I'm the expert on the company, so we also do brewery tours. These are bus trips where we'll bring you from brewery to brewery to brewery, and home delivery of beer. So if there was something that you had today that you really liked and you don't want to have to drive to Stittsville if you live in Orleans, or out to Orleans if you live in Stittsville, you can mix and match and get it delivered to your home. We do a one-day-a-week delivery service there too. Beer in Ottawa is exploding. We went from 6 years ago, we had 6 to 7, depending on what you classified as a brewery, in Ottawa, and this was in 2006, 7, 8, 9, and at that point, breweries started popping up. There was Broadhead started opening, Ashton Brewing Company, Beyond the Pale. Now we're at 18 to 20 in the region. If you go as far west as Perth and Pembroke and Forester Falls, you've got 25. If you go as far east out to Bose and Castle Brewery and Le Castard and Rigaud, Quebec, we are really, Toronto will never catch up, sorry for anybody from Toronto, but we've got 1 million people and 25 breweries, we win. They're not going to get 200 anytime soon. Victoria, on the other hand, they've got about 12 to 15 and they have 300,000 people, so we'll never catch up to Victoria. For craft beer in Ottawa, there is a huge variation in styles, and there's a huge variation in flavor profiles, but everybody's making a huge selection of them. So we brought you a selection of 4. I'll tell you which ones, and he can tell you a little about how you want to taste. The first beer that we brought and we would have had you to try would have been the Backbone Standard, which is a pale ale, very close to style. That's from a brewery around the corner from here, at the end of Antares, on the right, Ariga. That's 81 Ariga. They're literally a office walk from here. Lunch break. So the second beer that we would have...
That's not a good thing to say.
It's a dynamic, exciting workplace, I can tell. Just by being here, I thought it was a good thing to tell people. There's sandwiches on the way as well. They're in the same building as Rello sandwiches as well, so there's sandwiches on. The second beer that we would have had you try would have been the Earl Grey Marmalade from Canatech Park, and just before Orleans. That beer that we gave you was the Earl Grey Marmalade Saison. It is very close to style in Saison in some ways, and not in other ways. We'll leave that to Brendan. The IPA that we brought you was really far outside the range of IPA, but it was also brought in because it's something that's very accessible in Ottawa right now. The Pink Fuzz from Beyond the Pale is in about 10 to 12 different LCBOs. So it's one of the ones that you can get here in Ottawa all around the city. And the last beer that we would have had to try was the Covered Bridge from Stittsville, and that is the Stout. They're on Iber Road, just south of the Canadian Tire Center. So all of those beers are what we're trying, and tasting is kind of an art, to the point where there's actually the BJCP, which is the Beer Judge Certification Program. Look at that. BJCP. The BJCP program is something that beer judges go through, and actually they go through training to become a certified judge to judge other people's beer, which sounds like a horrible job.
What beer is supposed to taste like and then not supposed to taste like. And then you sort of get these ideas of what beer can be like if you start to kind of mess around with it. And just in the time that I've started doing it, where the BJCP guidelines have exploded because new categories are being added and new ways to judge beers are being added. The pale ale that you guys tried, it's an American pale ale. So the pale ale, you're going to be looking for something that's not too heavy-bodied, not too light-bodied, sort of right in the middle. And this is kind of like one of the most tricky things about reading and studying the BJCP guidelines. So many of them say medium to high body, low to medium body, low to high body, and this is stuff that you have to memorize for taking the test. And yes, there is a test. You start by learning all the flavors, learning all the off flavors, learning the guidelines, and then you take a test. And what they do is they give you four or five styles, and you have to write out sheets and judge them. And then what they'll do is they'll spike one with an off flavor. And these off flavors are really kind of, they're broad. They can be anything from diacetyl, which is a buttery slick flavor, to acetaldehyde, which is a green apple flavor, all the way to something like butyric, which is unfortunately like vomit. And all these things can happen because of improper fermentation temperatures and unhealthy yeast, or just having an unsanitary system. Band-Aid flavor can come from having unsanitary or unhealthy yeast, and it kind of like pops open the yeast and it gives this like rubber Band-Aid flavor. It's not fun to not fun when you get a beer like that.
I've heard they have tasting nights where they'll actually bring out beers that are all off, and you have to try to find the specific off flavor.
Yeah, and so you can actually buy kits. You can buy kits and spike beers to figure out what the off flavors are, or you can sort of buy beers and do different things to them. Hands up if you tried Grolsch or Heineken. Okay. Does anybody, so that typical Grolsch, Heineken, or even steam whistle taste or smell, skunky. That is directly related to the type of bottle that they use, and it's green. And what that does is allow light to come in and permeate the bottle and basically make the beer go bad. So essentially what you're doing is you're technically drinking bad beer, but it's a part of the actual style, and it's kind of like it's something that's very attributable to those beers, and kind of to Pilsners in general. Pilsners can be like that, not all of them, but it is sort of relative to that style. So yeah, so the pale ale, you're going to have something that's a little bit lighter in taste. It's not going to be overly malty, not overly hoppy. Sort of, they call it an easy drinking beer. The American Pale Ale is very different from other pale ales because it's an American Pale Ale that has American hops, and that's a C hop. The 3 C hops are Citra, Cascade, and Centennial. And this is very, very fresh. If you guys haven't smelled it, come up and smell it. It's absolutely amazing. It's my second favorite hop that I like to use in beers. It's really, really nice. And the C hops are characterized by citrus, and sort of tropical aromas and flavors too. And so the one beer that's sort of like different than the rest in these 4 is the Saison. And the Saison gets its characteristics, its spicy, peppery, clovey characteristics strictly from the yeast. And when we're brewing a Saison, it's the temperatures. The temperatures are ramped up all the way to 30 degrees. You start at about 16, 17 degrees, and then progressively get it up to about 30 degrees. And this is the only beer that you do that with. All other beers, the temperatures that you want to ferment at are about 18 degrees, 18 to 20, 20 being the maximum. Unless it's a lager, then you're down at about 10. But it's really the only beer style where you'll gradually get those temperatures up, and that will impart those peppery, clovey characteristics. But the Saison is also characterized by orange flavor, like it's got orange zest and orange juice or something like that in it to give it the orange flavor. This one in particular also has the tea in it, so the tea will give off a little bit of a tanniny characteristic to it. Can be a little bit bitter as well, depending on how long the tea is left in it. The stout, the porter, the chocolate coffee sweet stout, has coffee and cocoa nibs added to the fermenter to give it that chocolatey and roasty characteristic. And then, like I said, we also put in lactose into the boil towards the very end of the boil, because lactose is an unfermentable sugar, and it'll keep that body and make it also a little bit more sweet, as yeast won't be able to eat those sugars because they're unfermentable. And basically that's how beer gets formed, is you pitch in yeast, eats the sugars, secretes out alcohol, and then releases CO2. That's what yeast does to beer, and if it's unhealthy, it'll do other things, like I said earlier.
Band-Aid.
Yeah, butyric is the worst. And then the pink fuzz is an American wheat. So it's a wheat beer. It's supposed to be cloudy. It's got wheat in it, which is a protein that will not be, just won't be released from the beer. Most beers, actually all beer, typically is cold crashed at the very end of it, which pulls all the proteins and the yeast out of it to give it clarity. Some places use clarifying agents. I believe Broadhead still uses a clarifying agent called Biofine. and it's actually a vegan-friendly product because another one that is used is gelatin. Gelatin is also used. Isinglass is only used in actually Guinness, and people are, all of a sudden found out that Guinness wasn't vegan, even though it's not in the beer. It's just used to clarify. It drops out and it doesn't remain in the actual.
For those of you that don't know what a vegan is, it's an annoying person at a holiday party that will most likely refuse all of your food.
As a former vegan himself,
Retired vegan. I spent 17 years being one I can make fun of. So taste and profile wise, did anybody have any favorites? That's willing to admit to it being their favorite? Pink Fuzz is delicious, the back of the room. Anybody really enjoy the stout? Yes. Absolutely. Was there a specific reason why that one? Headless man. The chocolate, right?
Hi, Chris.
A headless man.
The dryness.